I'm Sherilyn Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. This is episode 244. Welcome back, my friends. Good to have you here today. I'm really excited about the interview that I am going to share with you. Cory Carlson is with me today. And Cory is a Cincinnati-based entrepreneur. He is an author and a coach, and someone who I met a few years ago when we had a speaking engagement in the same place on the same day. So the person who had put together the event introduced the two of us and said, hey, you two should probably know each other because some of the work that you're doing has some commonality to it. You know, you're kind of sitting in the same space. And I'm so glad that she took the time to do that a number of years ago because I've gotten to know Cory a little bit as his business has grown and his ideas have taken shape. And I'm excited to share a concept or two with him or from him with you today. So Cory is going to be talking about relationships today. And that's really not necessarily his singular expertise. In fact, he would tell you that he is by no means an expert, although I think that through humility and a lifetime of learning, he certainly is. But Cory really is an expert in the idea of winning at home first. So his first book released in 2019, and it was titled Win at Home First. He designed it to be sort of an inspirational guide for work-life balance. So this is now you can see where the event organizers saw our overlap. And he also has a new book that is coming out at the end of June, and he is going to share a little bit about that book with you as well. It's called Rise and Go. So Cory is today an entrepreneur, an author, a coach, a speaker. He is a husband and a father of 3, and he's really passionate about working primarily with business leaders, especially Christian business leaders, when both at home and at work. He spent 20 years in corporate America before he took this path. And he's working his way up to an executive level with significant responsibilities. And a lot of things were going really well, and some things were going not well at all. And he unpacks those in his book, again, with what I think is a great deal of humility and honesty that helps us all learn from him. So Cory, again, is here today to talk really about the relationship vector of winning at home. And the subject that I wanted him to talk about was rooted in a piece of writing that he released. And it was 4 types of dates that every couple needs to have. And that idea was so intriguing to me because I talk a lot in my coaching community about the importance of really being intentional about the time that we spend with our spouse or partner. And Cory's lens on this, his particular perspective, I think is especially poignant. It's really simple, something that I think all of us listening can take and run with. And so let me introduce you to Cory Carlson. Well, Cory, welcome to the Brilliant Balance Show.
Well, thank you very much, Sherilyn. It's great to see you again.
It is fun when I get to do this with people I know in the real world, so to speak. So I always love that. And you are definitely somebody I know in the real world. So it's fun to do this with you.
Yes, I agree. These Zoom relationships are something of the past, hopefully, and get back into face-to-face.
Yes. Well, I remember when we first crossed paths, we were both speaking kind of on the same day, and you came over to chat with me. And I was so intrigued by the title of your book because in an alternate universe, it could have been Brilliant Balance's name. So your first book was called Win at Home First. And I want you to just tell the listeners a little bit about how did you land on that title and what does that mean to you?
How I landed on that title was I honestly, I just kept saying it. And even when I went back to talk with, I had a writing coach to help me, and we started thinking of all these different names. And I was like, no, I want to go back to what I kept saying all the time. And how it happened was on coaching calls when I was working with clients, we would be talking about how to get their business doing better, how to improve culture, how to help with, vision and values of the organization. And we'd have these conversations, but at the same time, I knew either through speculation or they had just said it maybe in a previous call that home wasn't great. Their marriage may not have been going very well. Maybe they had a relationship with one of their kids that wasn't perfect, or they're skipping the gym, or they
or all those things.
Right? Or all those things. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Depending on the week, all those things are happening in my house. And so what I would say is, hey, we're going to work on vision. We'll work on values for the organization, but we have to win at home first in order for those other things to be sustainable. Because as the leader goes, so goes the company. So if the leader's just showing up tired, not all there, maybe they can't bring their A game to a meeting because they're thinking about the home argument or the argument that they may have when they get there. So win home first was just a phrase I kept saying, and it helped level set with the client to be like, all right, I understand. I'll work on home a little bit more.
It's so interesting because most people would totally head nod to the idea, right? Like no one is going to argue with winning at home first, but in practice, it's where we really struggle. Like all of our actions don't line up with that. They wouldn't indicate that we believe that it's important to win at home first. And you just see it of like, everyone is fiendishly following this professional success path, especially earlier in our careers, and then wondering like, why am I not happy? Right? Well, I mean, how many times have you seen it? I've seen it thousands and thousands of times.
I see it thousands of times. Well, I even see it in my own house. And what I will talk about a lot I believe that a lot of us, we just end our day too early mentally, meaning we walk through that front door and we think we're done, like it's over. But what I will encourage the listeners is our day does not end when we walk through the door at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever time it is. Our day ends when it hits the pillow. Mm-hmm. And so when we come home, we have got to be present and how can we help our spouse? How can we help our kids? Hey, how do we, self-care, mental health, all those pieces. And when we there's a phrase that we use in our house and I share with others is we can't give others the best and then we get the rest.
Yes.
And this actually came to light with my own family where our middle daughter, we went to her parent-teacher conference and I thought for sure they were going to say, this child's a problem. Because at home, we had seen some of that. She wasn't sharing. She was irritable, things like that. And our first child, we always got rave reviews at the parent-teacher conference. Right. So here we show up for this parent-teacher conference. We are ready. My wife and I said, all right, we're ready to receive some bad news. Maybe we aren't the best parents ever. And the teacher says, oh, and I just want to talk about your daughter. She's great. And we're like, you have the wrong kid. Right. And so we figured out what was happening and she was great in the classroom. When she got home, she just let her guard down.
She ran out of steam.
Yep.
Sure.
And so that's when we started the phrase is, hey, you can't be the best at gymnastics, the best at school. And then we just get the junk and we do our best to honor that. And so that's a big deal
and for kids and adults, we get home to that. It's a safe space. These people, at least theoretically, love us unconditionally. Right. And so you do want a place where you can sort of take off the mask, let down your hair a little bit and be authentic to how you're feeling. And yet what we're really learning is how to manage our energy so that we have some left. And that's what I hear you saying is you can't burn it all. You can't kind of leave it all on the field, so to speak, and come home and have nothing left. There's got to be some left for these relationships because nobody's going to snuggle up with their career. There's people that are coming home. I love the term sanctuary, like coming home to that sanctuary and you want it to be a safe space, but it needs to be nurturing and life-giving when you get there. And if everybody's cranky and depleted, it doesn't feel that way, by the time you get to that home environment. Love it. So this chapter of life that, most of my listeners are in is you're managing a number of things. There's career for sure, usually big responsibilities at work, trying to take good care of yourself, your family, who is probably in a very dependent phase, like kids at home, partner or spouse, and then friends, if you're lucky, that you still can spend some time with. And that's a full plate. So it's not surprising that one or more of those kind of things starts to suffer. And I think it often is relationships. And whether it's the relationships with our partner, whether it's relationships with our kids, with our friends, like I think we're almost overly confident that they'll be there for us no matter what. And so they can get neglected. And I'm curious what your kind of philosophy is on that, what your experience is of why do relationships start to fray when we're in this heavy lifting phase of life?
What I've seen in even my own life is we take it for granted a little, especially everything in the home, as we just talked about, but in some of even our friends, but we take our eye off of it. And relationships need intentionality. I mean, just in our own lives. I mean, who do we spend time with? It's people that text us. It's people that reach out. Hey, how are you doing? Hey, let's go grab a coffee or let's go grab a beer, whatever it could be. And so it's kind of a two-way street. And once one of it feels pretty much one way for a period of time, all of a sudden it stops. There's been a few different times in my career where I just put even career and family first, or high at the top, and friends fell off. Mm-hmm. And I remember one time, it was actually my coach kind of brought it to light when we were doing an exercise, and I was like, oh wait, I don't have any friends right now. And I knew I could call a bunch of these guys and get together with them, but as far as doing life with accountability, deep talks other than sports and weather and stocks, is like I didn't have that. But all I did is I put some intentionality around it, and fast forward a few years, I've got a group of guys I'm doing life with. We meet together every Thursday morning, and we do an annual trip together now. But it took intentionality to say, hey, this area is lacking any friends. Mm-hmm. If I want friends, I've got to go find some.
Well, it's all living things, right? Anything that's a living thing sort of has certain conditions it needs to thrive, and attention and care and like giving it what it needs. So, friendships need communication, they need interaction, they need like that flow has to be relatively frequent, or they do sort of wither or they go dormant. They can come back, you just gave us a great example of it doesn't take a lot to bring them back, but they need something or they'll at least go dormant. And so too with our, life partners. I mean, I think, in our marriages where we're counting on them being there for the long haul, it's really easy to, maybe what I would say happened certainly in my life and what I see in a lot of my clients is it becomes a multifaceted relationship. As soon you go from dating and it's all romantic to now we have a household to run. And so all of a sudden there's a job of now we're co-running this household, and then you have children. So now we're co-parenting, and then, whatever other things you're caring for aging parents or starting something in your community together, you have this multifaceted role. And then each of those sort of sub relationships requires attention. And I think it's really easy for one of them to get all the attention at the expense of the others, So you have this really cool, very simple, we were talking before we went live, like it's stupidly simple, right? But that's what I love about it is the simplicity of this idea of 4 dates that every relationship needs. So I want to talk about these as a way to sort of breathe life back into our partnerships. Let's talk about the first one.
Yeah, great. And these are simple because one, I need to know how to do it. I mean, because as you mentioned, if we're not careful, like we take the relationship for granted. Like I know for Holly and I that, yes, I know there's times I take it for granted, but we'll just become roommates. And it sucks where you're just you're in the same house, but you're just walking by each other. And it's awful. So 2 dates, love and logistics dates. Those are the first 2 to talk about. And what usually happens, the first thing that happens on dates is no one has them. Like when I get a new client, one of the first things I'll ask is, when's the last time you went on a date with your spouse? And it'll be like,
And if the answer is I can't remember, that's usually right.
And it's almost all the time they can't remember.
Yes.
It is, and so the good news is, just with a little time and intentionality, we can totally course correct that. And so that's the good news. Amazing, cool stories of people that just were roommates. They started spending some time together, and now they've got a healthy relationship. So a lot of people don't go on dates. Then if they do go on dates, it ends up just being a logistical meeting. And it's not necessarily a date. And so the idea is, hey, let's break that apart and actually have two dates, the love date and the logistical date. And so how that works in our house is Sunday night, Holly and I, and usually we both have our phones out. We usually have a bottle of wine, some music playing, and we are literally going through our phones day by day, maybe even hour by hour some days, to say, hey, this is where I need your help, Cory, with the kids. All right, Holly, I'm not going to be home Tuesday night because I'm going to a networking event, whatever it could be. And we go through the whole week. And what ends up happening is Holly kind of knows the food planning. She does all the food stuff in our house. So she knows the food planning, what nights. Maybe there's a night I'm going to grill. So we know that piece. I now know my carpooling thing. And so what makes it incredible, why it's so powerful for our relationship, and I wish we would have done this all, 24 years, but we've done it for, I don't know, the last 5 years or something. And it's just been great because what ends up happening is I get to tell her some of the highlights of my life, like what's going on. I've got this big meeting. I got a podcast interview that I'm super excited about. And so she gets to know what's happening.
Yep.
At the same time, I get to know what's happening, kind of even in her life and in the kids' life of what's happening that, I did not know we had a doctor's appointment this week on that. Oh, well, now I know. And so it's been good.
And you both get a chance, we do this in my household. We don't call it a date. We probably should. It would probably go a lot better with a bottle of wine involved. But that notion of it's like the weekly planning meeting is how we've referred to it. And I really like the frame of a date because you can turn it into something where this is how we're connecting in this job we do, which is running the logistics of this household together, right? So you get a chance to your point, say this is a core moment for me. I had to land this moment, this really important meeting or speaking event or whatever, or I'm preparing for something and I need time that night to do it. And by the way, 3 kids need to go in 3 different directions. So how are we going to sort that out? Where are we bringing in grandma or grandpa to help? What's the situation? I love the frame of making that a date because it elevates the whole experience to, this is still a beautiful part of our partnership. It's not mundane. It's the good stuff. This is the fabric of our life are all of these little practices and games and plays and school events and doctor's appointments. At some point, that's a lot of the fabric of our lives. So honoring it as it's like a moment we're going to have together I love the frame of that.
Well, by calling it a date and even that mentality it gives it permission to go a little bit longer or to have these conversations. You go a little deeper into something you're talking about. Maybe, why are you excited about that podcast, Cory? And you kind of go a little deeper. And then, we end up talking about something that Holly brings up, where if you're both just standing in the kitchen with your phones out, there's this feeling of, I got about 5 more minutes and then I got to roll.
Hurry up.
Hey, can you hurry up? Let's just hop to the weekend. Let's talk about what's going on the weekend. And so by having it being a date, a bottle of wine, music, sitting down, it allows for just some better talk. And so we do that throughout the week. That is on Sunday night throughout the week. And we also give a sneak peek into the weekend. What is the weekend activities? Obviously we'll hit the social calendar from Friday and Saturday night what's taking place. But the other thing we'll talk about, is there anything that you kind of want to do personally or even as a family? And so maybe I want to go for a run downtown, which takes a little bit longer than just going out my front door. And so I want to say, hey, Saturday morning, can I go do this? And then my wife is very creative. And so she sews and does some other things. So she may say, hey, I actually need to do a sewing project. What happens is if we both know that, then we can make sure the other has the kid responsibilities. What used to happen in our house is if we didn't talk about in advance our weekend ideas, all of a sudden Saturday morning rolls around and it's like, hey, can I go run?
Well, I was going to do this.
I was going to sew. Well, and then what would happen is, let's just say I caved and I let her sew while she was sewing.
Resentment.
I was
bitter.
Come on, man. I wish I could go run.
Right.
And then when I did get a chance to run, it was raining and I couldn't go run.
Right.
So then I'm extra mad. And so it just helps us. And then so we do, anyways, logistics, we do Sunday night, and then we usually review the weekend come about Thursday. Hey, anything changed? Yeah, this plan was canceled. Hey, we're adding something new to the calendar or whatever. And it's been awesome. So that's the logistic one, which then allows for the second one, which is just the love date, which is just going and hanging out. Yes, you may still talk a little bit about carpool. You may still talk a little bit about the kids because something's going to pop. But as a whole, you can just talk, hang out, and have fun like you used to.
With some freedom of like, I think everybody by midlife is like, remember when we used to just be able to go out and not have to talk about all this? And the simplicity of just separate them so that one is already handled and it doesn't need to spill over, right? It gives you that sort of clean slate for something that's just fun, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. Do you ever find yourself saying, I just need a minute to breathe? While the whole idea of meditation can sound totally intimidating, I've found that stepping away from the chaos of life, even just for a few minutes, is incredibly restorative. So if you're short on time, but could use a few moments of peace right about now, listen to my 5-minute meditation for working moms. It'll help you clear your head and come back to your day feeling centered and refreshed. Head over to brilliant-balance.com/breathe. Press play and settle in for a few mini moments of peace right now.
So then the other two are then they all start with the same letter for some reason. So these two are scheduled.
This is a device to
spontaneous.
help you remember.
Yeah. See this? That's not creative. I am. Anyway, scheduled and spontaneous. I think if we are going to talk about dates, and that most people do, they go with spontaneous. Hey, let's just go on a spontaneous date, when we can or when it makes sense. Well, what ends up happening is you really never go on a spontaneous date because when Friday rolls around or, whatever the case may be, you're tired or, your partner's tired. And so you don't necessarily go on a spontaneous date. Or instead of going out to eat, decide, let's just watch a movie. There's nothing wrong with watching a movie at the house, but if that's always the date, that means there's no conversation, there's no really connection. So what is great, if we can split these out and do scheduled and spontaneous. In our house, scheduled is every 2 weeks. That's what we need. Some people can't afford financially or just time to do once a week. If so, great, go for it. My recommendation is not to do any less than once a month, just to keep that connection. But by scheduled, where schedule has so much power is, well, one, you can organize babysitter, you can organize reservations, but the other part is it's on the calendar, and ideally, you don't cancel it, you don't avoid it. This worked out perfect just recently in our house. I had a speaking engagement in Kansas City, came back. And in our house, it seems like re-entry. Anytime I'm out traveling, come back, it's a little wonky. I'm walking in the door at a high energy level as far as, it went great. It's, and my wife's kind of tired. She's had the 3 kids done driving around in the city, doing all these different things. And so our energy's a little off. My jokes aren't as funny. She's doing things that are kind of, maybe annoying me, whatever it could be. Well, this particular night, we had a date. And if it was not scheduled, we wouldn't have done anything. We probably would have hung out in different parts of the house.
Sure.
But instead, we went out and just eat by the time the salad was brought. I mean, we had kind of, patched some things up, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
But because it was on the calendar,
sure,
we honored it and we went and did it.
So my listeners will know, they hear me use the phrase, what gets scheduled gets done. All the time, ad nauseum. And I think this is the relationship manifestation of that think about how many things we schedule regularly. Women, you make a hair appointment and you're like, I'm gonna make the next one while I'm there so that I know it's gonna happen. If I don't, I'm gonna not be able to get in. I might not get it at the time I want. Dentist appointments, you make it 6 months later. So the concept of sort of pegging on the calendar so it just doesn't get away from you, the frequency with which we're going to do something. And then what I really love about scheduled, especially if you pick what it is, we got concert tickets, we're seeing a play, we have that great restaurant we've been waiting to go to. You have that sense of anticipation of, remember when you were a kid and it was almost time for Christmas or vacation, it's like that anticipation can come when it's on the calendar and what it is. So different than spontaneous, which has its own benefits. I like the idea that the scheduled dates give you that ability to, one, not let them get away from you, and then also get to look forward to it. Like there's something is coming, which is kind of cool.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'll talk with a lot of individuals, well, one about their own life, but also just in their marriages. A lot of times people reach burnout or a depression. I'm not going to say full on, deep depression, but just we all get in those funks. And it's like, hey, what is that beacon of light you have in your calendar that's giving you energy? It's giving you something to look forward to. So as a family, it's a family vacation a lot of times. Oh, and once we go to Hilton Head or once we go to Michigan or wherever it may be, it's like, oh, I can't wait. Same thing in a marriage is, what is that thing that you two are looking forward to? We've had a pretty great run of some of that where we went to Boston to see our favorite singer-songwriter. We just did a staycation here in Cincinnati, and we've got another one coming up in July. It's just like we're trying to do these different things just to keep that spark in our marriage.
And I think when you see a really joyful couple, I was just spent time with a really joyful couple yesterday, and when you see that, they are committed to that. Often, I mean, everybody listening, like, go observe and ask the people that you see who are truly joyful couples, how much time they're spending doing these kinds of things. And you're going to see the correlation. It's that time and the investment of that energy and attention sort of feeds the relationship in a way that it grows, right? It's nurtured, which is it's evident. Like, you can actually observe it from the outside.
Yep. And they've all that joyful. They've let their guard down. They're comfortable around each other. They're not trying to act all big and bad, or they've got their stuff figured out. They're just themselves.
Or to the other side, that bitterness of just like they're just transactional. You said earlier it becomes transactional. If you're just transacting life, it lacks that energy of like caring. The love is just like it doesn't have anything to feed itself. So it becomes transactional, right? And that's evident too.
Yep.
Yeah. Talk about spontaneous. That's the hardest one for me, by the way. You're like, oh, most people do spontaneous. I was like, oh, I'm opposite girl here.
Yeah. Well, what I mean by most people do spontaneous is they just don't do scheduled. So it's not necessarily they do spontaneous. They just don't do scheduled.
They don't do it at all.
Yeah. And so where spontaneous comes into play is it's a gorgeous day. And it's like, let's just go for a bike ride. Let's go, sit on a patio and have some appetizers, but just go do something as opposed to going different directions where the guy's like, well, it's nice out. I'm going to go meet my buddies for, drinks. Or the woman's like, it's nice. I'm going to go tinker around the garden by myself or go meet women for wine. Whatever it is, it's just sometimes our default when, instead of a spontaneous day with each other, it's we go different directions. It's time alone. It's time with our own friends. And so this idea of schedule and spontaneous is, hey, when's the last time you just did something spontaneous in your relationship? When's the last time you just said, hey, let's just go for a walk? We got 30-minute window here and let's just go for a walk. Whatever it could be.
It's probably important for us to acknowledge like ages and stages matter here, right? Your kids are like my kids' ages. They're a little older. They're a little more independent. I'm sure there's some people with really young kids listening thinking, I mean, must be nice to just spontaneous, but it's all about finding that frame. You've nap time when you have little guys that creates that ability for like, hey, while they're napping, instead of maniacally cleaning, maybe we sit on the patio and have that, glass of iced tea or whatever. So you have to sort of match what level of spontaneity makes sense for your life stage, but it's there. It's just there in different ways than in it. And it will ebb and flow over the, as the kind of character of your family changes. And the other thing I think is important for us to acknowledge is, we have 24 hours in a day. And I think you're right that a lot of people are so starved for time alone that they'll prioritize getting to do exactly what they want and not having to negotiate with anybody or compromise on what that thing is. I did an episode about, why our devices are so addictive. And it's because they're so curated to just to us. Like I can listen to whatever podcast I want or whatever music I want. And so can my husband. So having to sort of lean into the compromise that comes with, we're going to decide together how to spend this time, bears fruit in different ways. But I just want to acknowledge it does mean, in a fixed 24-hour day, it's going to come from somewhere. So take it from the stuff that isn't feeding you. We all know we've got some time in our day that we're just wasting, that's not feeding anybody. And that's what you want to source it from to kind of create new space for your relationship.
Yeah, I know you talk about this on your podcast, and it's just doing a time audit. I mean, when you look at how much you spend your time, I mean, when I get as we all do, I think it is on Sundays, you get that phone notification of how many your screen time for that week. I mean, that's very eye-opening for sure. And so I know for me personally, it's deleting some social media apps off my phone just so I don't jack with it anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's been helpful. But there is time that we have if we make it.
Yeah. And we're in a bit of a divide and conquer. Like, I know, again, this busy family stage that you're in and I'm in, it's so efficient to think about divide and conquer. I'll go to the grocery store, you go to Costco. I'll do this, you do that. And sometimes just doing those things together is a way of, like, even though it's not a super romantic activity, it's still time together. You still have time in the car. You still have time of like having that shared experience, which sort of recalibrates your energy. Right? Because you mentioned, like, if you're traveling, you come back and your energy is in different places. Well, that is what happens, right? You're in a different environment. You've had a totally different experience. But so the more shared experiences we have with friends, with our partners, with our kids, the more we're calibrating our energy. So we kind of have this, we match. And that, I think you feel that. We don't always have words for it, but I do think you feel that when that energy is matched.
Yep, absolutely. And we know we're in the house. I mean, I can tell when I'm in the house if Holly and I are doing good or not based off just that energy.
That energy.
I mean,
yeah.
Do we look each other in the eyes? When I say bye, is it, okay, see ya? Or is it, hey, have a great day?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, you can totally just feel it. And
totally.
So if we're paying attention.
Right. If you're not already thinking about the meeting you're going to, or the podcast that's still in your AirPods while you're having the conversation, like, that distraction is real. And I think you can also feel that when it's frayed. So all of these dates together, love, logistics, scheduled, spontaneous, like, what do they do for us when you knit that together into rhythm? What do you think it does for a relationship?
I think what it does for a relationship is, well, one, it makes it sustainable, where you're actually, we mentioned divide and conquer. I mean, if we're not careful, we're divided. I mean, we're just different ships in the night, crossing. And so by having these dates, this intentionality, your spouse knows you care. Your spouse knows that you are putting them on the calendar. As you mentioned, a similar phrase I will use is, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist. And I want someone to see my calendar and be like, yeah, he's got a relationship with his wife. He spends time with her. But I think for us, what it does is by going on these dates now, it prepares us for what you and I are seeing in our clients who are empty nesters. That I know that there are some listeners who have young kids. There's some listeners that have the teenagers. It's just kind of like, yeah, we're fine. We're going to be okay. But we also have listeners, and then I know I've got clients, man, when they're empty nesters, it is, if they don't know each other and they haven't been going on these 4 different types of dates and they've not been investing in each other, they're going to look at each other and be like, we have nothing in common.
Who are you?
I don't know who you are. I've gone this way. You've gone that way. Maybe it's just best we just end it, or whatever it could be. Or you don't end it and you just live in just kind of roommate land forever.
Yeah. What I love is it's this braiding in of, like, so you don't get too separated. If you could see me with my hands, you guys listening, it's like, picture those strands of a braid. If you just keep grabbing the other one and, like, braiding it in, right? You're having that, you're going to have some time alone. He's going to have some time alone. And then, like, but that connection back gives you something centered and strong where you still know each other, because all of us are evolving and growing. We're becoming, it would be terrible if we were exactly the same as we were the day we met and got married. I mean, I've been married a long time. I don't want to be the same person, but that notion of growing, sort of where you don't get so far apart, you're not growing in such different directions that you can't find each other. So these touch points that Cory is recommending sort of give you that thing to come back to that allows you to make sure you're not, that to the extent possible that you're growing in a similar direction, that there's something to still be able to see them in each other, even though you're evolving into, growing human beings. So good. I think I really love this model, is why I asked you to come do the episode with me, because I think it's such a simple thing for people to take away and that really will make a difference. Like you're putting the underpinnings of a strong relationship in place. And if there's something to be built upon, then you've given it like kind of the nutrients it needs. I don't want to let you go without talking a little bit about where you're going next. So your first book was Win at Home First. You have a new book. Tell us about the book, and it's coming out in June. So tell us a little bit about Rise and Go.
Rise and Go is a book that I basically started writing in 2020. I didn't know I was writing a book. It just started to take place as all of us, 2020 was just kind of an eye-opening experience as leaders. And whether we're leading a team at work or a team at home or both, all leaders get knocked down. It's just the great leaders get up quicker. And in March 2020, I went all into coaching, where I left any additional kind of revenue I was getting from help, corporate. I went all into coaching. So insurance was on my own. I mean, it was there. 100% of my revenue was from coaching, speaking. So what ended up happening is COVID happens. March 13th, it becomes a pandemic, and speaking's done. So I lost 35% of my revenue overnight, and I was scared. I was frustrated. I was mad. I was all these emotions, and basically got down into a valley. And as I, over those coming months, from journal entries that were very just open and transparent, because journal's a big part, and my faith journey is a big part of my story. And so my journal entries, people I'd have on my podcast, they have very timely stories with podcast guests, different, scriptures that I would read, client stories. All these were kind of coming together at the time to end up putting together content that ended up helping me kind of come back up with courage and then move forward with confidence. And then over the last year, this content was battle tested with my clients and seeing them come together. So with the Rise and Go, it's a book to help leaders get back up. There's 20 different, chapters, each of them with different content and things to help you. And at the end, there's a tool to help you build a Rise and Go manifesto, which is basically it's a document I put together that everyone will make their own. But I look at it a few times a week, where it's got I am statements, it's got my, a prayer in there, it's got some other components in there, but it's to basically help get up. So I'm super excited about this content because, one, it helped me, but it's also helped clients. And then I've asked people to endorse the book, which it was just been a fun experience, but people's endorsements coming back have blown me away.
Oh,
Both in the endorsement themselves, but even some of those sentences leading up to it. Like, hey, I was in a funk. You didn't know this when you asked me to endorse the book, and this actually helped. So that's my hope, is to help leaders.
Yeah, it's a resilience manifesto. I mean, that's what I'm hearing is I cannot ever unhear the Chumbawamba song of like, I get knocked down and I get up again. But that's like what I keep thinking when you're talking is like, that is life. That is all of our stories, is things will happen that take you under. And what do you do next? Because you're not going to avoid it. So building a skill set of knowing, what am I going to do next? What am I going to lean on? How do I touch ground, touch bottom, and sort of push up again, is we can never learn enough about. So we will link up to Rise and Go and encourage everyone to check it out. And I'm so grateful for your wisdom on relationships. It's, we don't always get a male perspective around here. And I always love it when we do, because I think it does, a lot of us are in relationships with men that we are trying to kind of find our way in. How do you really look at this from both lenses? So knowing like how hard this is for everyone involved to keep that relationship at the center when we're managing so many things, careers and ourselves and our friends and our lives outside of the relationship. I think what you shared today has been really helpful. So thanks for doing that. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you very much. And it is hard. I mean, my platform's winning a home first. I wrote a book on it. Right. That doesn't mean I'm always winning a home first. I mean, it is hard. Work. And so I think as a listener, give yourself grace if it's not going great at home right now. But you have a choice to be intentional to course correct, as opposed to let the status quo, continue. And so that's what hopefully we brought today, is that value to help someone take some steps back to intentionality in their relationship. So thank you very much, Sherilyn.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. All right. Thank you for listening and staying with me during my interview with Cory today. I hope that you are walking away with something that you can use in your personal life, in your relationship, that will serve you really well. If you are looking to check out Cory's first book, Win at Home First, or his more recent book, Rise and Go, we will link that up in the show notes, or you can go to his website, which is Cory M. Carlson. You got to put the M in there. And that's Cory and Carlson are both with a C. And CoryMCarlson.com. You can go to the site and get your hands on those books. They are available through the site or wherever books are sold. All right, that's all for today, my friends. Till next time, let's be brilliant.
This is the podcastfactory.com.